Guten Abend und herzlich willkommen zu Gredig Direkt. Heute mit einer Premiere. Zum ersten Mal haben wir ein Gespräch ganz auf Englisch, mit deutscher Übersetzung natürlich. Aber wenn Sie das Gespräch gerne im Originalton auf Englisch hören, können Sie das selbstverständlich machen über den Zweikanalton. Mein heutiger Gast ist ein langjähriger Formel-1-Fahrer aus Genf, der uns letztes Jahr den Atem geraubt hat mit einem der spektakulärsten Unfälle, die es in den letzten Jahrzehnten gegeben hat im Motorsport. Schön ist er da, und zwar gesund. Welcome, Romain Grosjean.
Thank you.
Let's get the nationality question out of the way right from the start. You were born and raised in Geneva to a Swiss father, French mother. You have dual citizenship. You drive for France. But you always said, as a human being, I'm more Swiss than French. Why is that?
That's what my wife says all the time. And
because she's French, right?
She's French, right? And yeah, I think I'm more Swiss than French in a way. I think I always like to be on time. You know, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's very important for me, time. And I just, the way I think, I operate, I think I was, as you say, I was born in Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland. I had the opportunity, more opportunities to race as a French driver. And that's why I picked up the French driving license at the time and became a French driver, or driving with a French flag. But I am very, very much Swiss.
On the other hand, you were almost not considered a Swiss sportsman in this country, and maybe not as known as other famous Swiss sportsmen. Did that ever hurt you, that maybe also in the German part of Switzerland you didn't get the recognition that you would have deserved?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I was not doing sport. I am not doing sport for recognition. I'm doing sport very selfishly for what I like doing. And you know, as obviously the question was asked thousands of times, are you Swiss or French? And obviously, if I win a race, it was the French national anthem that was going on. But you know, as I say, I am both. I'm European before everything, and I'm very proud that I was born in Switzerland, that I live in Switzerland. You know, I lived a bit in France, in England, and eventually came back in Switzerland to raise my kids, because that's where I feel the best.
You get that question asked all the time, so let's not dwell too much on it. Let's dwell on something else that you made headlines all over the world, not only in Switzerland, with that horrendous accident last year in November in Bahrain. The question of all questions, of course, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm okay, recovering very well. The body is a very strong machine, you know. From what I went through to only have minor burns, or, you know, there weren't minor burns, but it was 3% of the body. The right hand was less touched than the left hand. But seeing that, you know, we were talking about, yeah, initially it wasn't good looking, you know, maybe it was to get skin from another part of my body, my hands, and then he came out a little bit. I said, oh, maybe not a need for it. And then, oh yes, definitively. 2, ended up not having any of that, having my own skin coming back, you know, to life, being able to move everything. I mean, there's a lot of work every day, and when I wake up in the morning, moving my hands is not easy, and that is an horrendous feeling, you know, just trying to move your fingers and not being quite able to.
Very painful, I can imagine, as well. No?
Yes, I stopped painkiller because I just had enough of it, and I didn't want to carry on the painkiller, and I think psychologically it's a step for me as well to say I'm off medicine. But yeah, you know, I do that 3,000 times a day minimum, just because that's the way I'm going to get the mobility in my hands. And as I say, I'm not done with motorsport, with racing, I think, so I want to do more.
But it's almost incredible. I mean, you're almost unharmed. And if we see these pictures again, and of course we have to see them again, of that accident in Bahrain in November, let's have a look. It happened right at the start. You went into the barrage there, and it cut the car into 2. The fire started immediately, and you were stuck in your car, I think it was for 28 seconds. And if we look at the car, how it looked after the accident, it's almost a miracle that you escaped as unharmed as you did.
Yeah.
Take us through that accident. What did you feel?
You know, I think the impact it was a big impact. We, in the ears we have got an accelerometer, well, two actually. So on the left ear I got 59 Gs, and the right ear 57 Gs as a deceleration, which is huge. So the first thing that was not really clear is why I didn't lose conscience. Obviously, it saved my life, because if I had lost conscience, I would have probably burned there. The impact wasn't that big. And then initially, I just undid my seatbelt and wanted to jump out of the car. And I realized I was stuck. So I didn't know if I was upside down against the wall. It was dark. I was through a barrier, which I didn't know at the time. But it was completely dark. So I thought, well, I'm going to wait, that they come and help me. And then I started watching, and I see all that orange, yellow color, and oh, okay, I'm on fire. I don't have time to wait. So then I tried again to jump out.
Did you feel the heat?
It wasn't hot. Maybe it's just my brain. I'll tell you after what. The brain is a very, very powerful machine, tool, muscle, whatever we can call it. So, I tried to jump out, and then I said, okay, I need to go. So I tried to the right, I tried to the left. I'm stuck, so I go back down in the car. And I think, no, I cannot finish like Niki Lauda. That cannot happen,
Who was stuck in a burning car.
Who was stuck in a burning car in 1976. Mm-hmm. So I try again, and then I can't. So I'm stuck in there, and then I sit back down. And then, the feeling that's it, that's your day. So
you thought you were going to die?
I thought I was going to die. I was ready for it. The body kind of relaxed. I was in peace with myself, and really ready to die. And I even asked myself, where am I going to burn first? Is it my hands? Is it my legs, my hands? How is it going to happen? And then I thought about my 3 kids, and I said, no, they can't live without a dad. And I don't know how. I had the idea to kind of twist my head to the left, turn my body, try to escape. When started to go through, and then my foot was stuck in the car. So I had to go back down, pull on my leg, get my foot out of the pedals, and then redo that procedure again, and manage to jump out. I knew my hands were burning. I could feel the pain, and I could tell I was grabbing fire. But at that time it's so non-important.
And the burns came when you actually climbed over the fence, also on the hands, I think.
No, I put my hands on the barrier, but actually I didn't get anything on the palm, which is great. So it's really when I was trying to climb out of the car on the halo that I was burning, and I saw my gloves. They're normally red, and I was watching them, and they were getting full black, and I knew they were burning. But again, as I say, it doesn't really matter. And
that image that we just saw, it's almost iconic now, because you saw it everywhere. And funny enough, I think one of your sons has a different approach to you now, because when he saw that picture, he thought you were almost like a superhero, right?
Yeah, the 3, I think, for my kids, it has been one of the most difficult things to live. And, we never block them for watching race live, but if they don't want to come and watch the race, they don't need to. They're not obliged. And on that occasion, they were watching with my wife and my dad. And my wife and my dad, they never watched the races together, but it's just that the kids were with the grandparents, so they came, bring them back, and they said, oh, let's watch the race together. Okay. Luckily, my dad's wife was there as well, so she could take the 3 kids out straight away from the room. And then, for me, the hardest now to think is my wife. She was in front of the TV, and she was thinking, how am I going to tell the kids if Dad is done, he's gone, How am I going to tell them that? And that's the hardest for me to live. It's not what I went through. I can talk about the accident. I don't have any nightmares. It's going to be a huge part of my life, and I'm going to have scarf forever on my hands, so I can't forget it. But I don't have problem with that,
Your wife, you mentioned her. She wrote in a tweet afterwards that it's also, she thanked your children that they actually, as you described, they gave you the force to push through and to try again. That kind of relaxed attitude that you had at a certain time in the cockpit. Do you think that kind of helped you in the end? That maybe just at the moment where you were able to let go, you were able to survive as well?
Yes. I think, if you think about all the elements, I hit the wall at more than 200 kph. I got a 60G slowdown. I'm on fire, stuck in a car. You can imagine how the brain goes crazy and try to find solutions. And I think the moment where I relaxed is actually like a reset button for the brain to say, have a brief. You know, when you're too stressed, you do something and you start trying to open a door and you miss it, something that you would never miss. If you breathe a bit, then you do it properly. And I think the brain, it was in that aspect. And as I mentioned, you know, it was crazy. I told everyone there were no fire in the cockpit. There were no fire in the cockpit. I was fine. I've seen footages from the very onboard camera that haven't been released yet. There's fire absolutely everywhere. I am sitting...
Right from the start.
Right from the start, absolutely everywhere. But my brain took the information and put it aside. I said, what is that? You know, what is it going to change? Nothing in the way that I need to survive. Same thing, I didn't get the noise. And 2 weeks after the accident, the noise of the fire came back. And it actually makes a very, very strong noise, like you would have a little bit on the motorway if you open your window and the air coming through, the noise of the fire does that. And very recently I got the smell of the burning carbon coming back.
So it almost like a comeback of the accident.
The sense came, you know, after, because at the time they were not important. You know, what does it matter if they smell carbons or not? You know, it doesn't really matter. But the brains really had so much to manage at the time that it took some of the information, like store them, and they just recently came back.
Speaking of the brain, to cite your wife Marion once again, she said in an interview that it's been quite striking. We know that it's a dangerous sport, and there's that saying from Jackie Stewart, I think 50 years ago, if you raced for 5 years, your chance of dying was 2 out of 3. But in the last 20, 30 years, the sport made such a progress that between Ayrton Senna in '94 and I think Jules Bianchi in 2015, there weren't any casualties anymore. So speaking of the brain, do you think you kind of fooled yourselves as well, the drivers, that you think it's not even possible anymore that something as grave as this could happen?
I mean, we've had, as you say, we've had Jules Bianchi and in Formula 2, Antoine Hubert as well last year. The year before, already in 2021, but in 2019 we had Antoine Hubert. So there's always a reminder. But yes, for us, all my generation, we've never seen fire on a racing car. And we didn't even think it was possible anymore. And clearly, you know, that was a big one. Where everyone was like, okay, yeah, fire still can happen. Obviously, I'm going to have a huge legacy, I think, in motorsport, because we're going to learn so much from that crash in the way that how can we make sure that, you know, the gloves, which is the first thing that you use your hand to jump out of everything. How can they get better? You know, the rest, I have nothing else. You know, I had a bit of a broken knee, but that's nothing from the accident. So the gloves are going to get better. How can we make sure that the guard rail, the wall, they don't open? Because if the guard rail had stayed in one piece, that wouldn't have been the case. Maybe it would have been a bigger impact initially, but then it wouldn't have been any fire. So how can we make sure that doesn't happen in the future and so on? And I'm very proud of being able to be involved in that safety research and helping them, and with the experience that I went through.
You live to tell the story. So
yeah, exactly.
Another interesting part for me is what do you take out of it? Because of course, you mentioned your family. You mentioned also the fear they had. And as a father myself, I would ask myself: is this really what I want to do, and what I want to make my family go through? There's an interesting quote from Niki Lauda, who was, as you said, stuck in the same situation. He was asked that question once: does he think about his family during a race weekend? And that's what he said.
If I do a mistake, I kill myself. And I cannot be disturbed by anything of my 100% concentration, more or less to stay alive over the race weekend. That means you have to block everything out and then do the job.
Do you agree? Do you have to concentrate on racing alone and you cannot allow yourself to think too much of your family?
Yes. I think, you know, we race different times and I can fully understand Niki's code from when he raced. Mine would be a bit more... Not gentle is not the word, but smooth, you know, because yes, I mean, it's funny, no, it's not funny, but before going to the last 3 races of the season, I went through all my paper with my wife, Marion, in case anything happened. And we normally do that start of the year. I decide the insurance, the level of insurance that you want to cover yourself, and then we went through a paper. But I don't know why. I said, these few things have changed, so I need to show you. And a week and a half later, I almost died, you know. But yes, when you're on the race weekend, you need to focus. There's so many things going on, and you're racing cars at 300 kph, close to each other. So the danger is always here. But I mean, my family is one of my biggest strengths. You know, going to a weekend when things are not going your way and so on, you think about them and puts things in perspective.
But is it a bit selfish also to kind of risk your life almost on a weekly basis?
Probably. But I think sport in general is selfish. You need to prepare yourself. You need to be in the right mental state. You need to, go wherever it asks you to go. You know, if you think about the skier, Swiss, we've got some
incredible. We have a picture here who had an incredible accident in Kitzbühel with 104.
So I was watching live. I felt really bad. I was watching it live, and I really felt terrible for Urs. And I was just waiting to see the image that we could see him sort of moving and kind of being conscious. You know, at the time you don't really care. Is the knee okay or so on? Doesn't really matter. You know, is he still here? And I mean, it's the sport. It's what we love to do, but also it's hard to explain to my kids. They're still very young, but if I'm the dad that I am today, it's because also I have got that passion and that that feeds me in a way. And if I'm obliged to stop racing, maybe today, maybe I'm gonna get really angry with the situation and so on, and not be the same. So obviously, they initially they say, oh, you should stop racing and you can become a tennis player, an artist, an engineer. They named every work you could do, every job.
That is not as dangerous as motor.
Yeah, they say, guys, I would love to be a tennis player, but I'm not good enough, and I'm 35, so forget it. But I think in one day they would understand that if I'm the dad that I am and they like it, it's because also I was able to live my passion.
But interesting what you said about almost suffering more when you see someone else in that situation. There is a very interesting quote from Charles Leclerc after the accident that you had from the onboard microphone. And let's just listen for a second.
Fuck. This was a big one. Is he okay?
I will come back to you.
Fuck. I've seen it in the mirrors. Who is it?
I don't know whether you've seen that before, but it's the worry of your colleagues or the ones you drive against. It's almost as hard as being in an accident yourself when you see it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, for sure. Circuit. For sure. I mean, it was hard, and I know they kept replaying the footage during the red flag, and it was hard for the guys, and some of them complained that it was too much, and I can fully understand. And anyone that came to see me at the hospital in the next few days, I explained what I went through and so on. I said, look, guys, it's our job. We know it. We obviously, when we put our helmet and close our visor, we forget about the danger. We don't forget about the danger, but we put it aside, and we are going into not a war, because it's not the right word, but into a battle, into a fight.
It's a very kind of steep competition as well.
Yeah.
No?
And we accept, since we are doing go-karts. We're speaking about my accident a lot because it was a lot of medias and so on. But you think in go-karts and so on, there are terrible accidents and actually death and so on. And you kind of know that motorsport is dangerous, and you accept it, and it's part of our life. We're not crazy, because then everyone going to Kitzbühel for skiing is crazy. No, they're not crazy. That's what we do. That's part of also of the excitement, of the adrenaline, of the challenge that we need as a competitor. But yeah,
I mean, it's a sport with a lot of kind of almost too big to be true personas as well. Let's take the world champion, Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. He's very outspoken about things. He says what bothers him as well on a political level. If you look around in the paddock of Formula One, are these types needed there as well, who speak their mind and who tell if things aren't going their way, and for example, if there's a political issue that they want to speak about?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's always difficult because you're an employee at the end, and
so you have to be a bit careful. Lewis
is 7-time world champion. He's earned loads and loads of money, so he can speak. If there is if for example some drivers don't want to go racing because they go on strike, he won't have a problem to go on strike. If you're a youngster and it's your first season in Formula One and you're trying to make everything perfect, and you tell your team, I'm going to go on strike. Oh, well, okay, go on strike, but don't come back next race. Yeah.
There's always a new one waiting.
There's always a new one waiting. There's 20 seats in the world. It's so hard, and that's why it's also difficult to be friends with other drivers, because you always want the best seat. There's only 2-4 seats that are good in the championship, so you always want to try to take the seat of the guy which is here. But it's also hard to be a friend of yours and you say, "Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna take your seat." If it's a friend, it's difficult.
But does that mean that is Lewis taking a risk? For example, there's that scene with taking the knee with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, where some of the drivers took the knee and were protesting in that way. You as well, for example. We have a picture where you're on the left. Others didn't. Is there a risk of saying too much or being too outspoken?
Well, there's always a risk everywhere, isn't it? I think Lewis really took that political matter very seriously, and we could really understand the situation. And I spoke with him about it, and I said, yes, we're happy to support you in that. It's important for the world. It was just general talking about racism, not only Black Lives Matter. Another one, I would say racism. I was lucky. I never really suffered from it, but I don't understand you can be racist. So yes, I'm happy to support you in that way, and I think it was important for him. So in that one is not really. I mean, he went there. It was big worldwide. Formula One supported it. Mercedes did a great job supporting it, and the drivers also supported him. So in that one, I don't think that was a danger or a risk in that one, because it was important that the sport showed the support. It's more, other subject that could be a little bit more tricky for youngster, whilst top guys they can speak about it.
And he speaks a lot about it. Is it almost too excessive, you think?
I don't know. It's his personality and the way he wants to do it. Lewis lives a little bit in his own world, I would say. Funny enough, recently he posted a lot of pictures on him on cross-country skiing. He says, "This is the best training in the world. Why didn't I know before about it?" Well, if you had been watching my social media for the last 10 years, I do it every winter. I've been competing in cross-country event. I think it's mega, and it really gives you a great physics.
But you could teach him some lessons, maybe.
Probably on the skis, yes.
But let's get back into the cockpit, and really literally into the cockpit. We have an onboard camera of you driving, and that's something a lot of people who don't know this world, and there are only 26 drivers in Formula One, as you said, can't really relate to. What kind of feeling do you have in the cockpit?
It's really good. It's one of the best feeling I can.
Is it happiness?
Think of. It's happiness. It's being, into the moment, not thinking about anything else, being really involved with the car, and if you're an artist, I guess, and you're playing music at the time, you're into what you're doing. That's what you love doing. Obviously, for me, it's driving a car, and sadly, it's very difficult to explain to people because it's very complicated to share the emotion. But yes, it's happiness. It's being in the right moment. It's doing what you like doing. And for me, when you do a great qualifying lap, it's like those 700 kilos of carbons and 1,000 horsepower. They're an extension of your body, and you can, whatever you do, it's going to do what you want, and that's sublime. Yeah. It doesn't happen very often, but it does. And whenever you get one of those laps, it's incredible.
Sometimes it doesn't go as you plan, and of course there have been other accidents you were involved in. Let's have a look at some of them.
60 degrees, and Hulkenberg can do nothing to avoid him, and goes off the track, losing his left rear. He actually was a bit sluggish, and there's Lewis Hamilton slewing into the wall, and oh dear, Romain Grosjean and Fernando Alonso. It's a very big crash indeed into the barriers towards the exit of turn 3. And that is a very...
When we showed these pictures to the people in the editorial studios and everything, they're all gasped when they see this, and it begs the question of all questions: do you have to be a bit crazy to do this?
No, I don't think so. You can argue that every athlete that does anything could be crazy. We spoke about skiing in Kitzbühel. The finish line of the Vendée Globe is happening very soon, and they are going on their own on a boat around the world, crossing most of the crazy condition you can cross. And for me, riders, MotoGP, you know, they drive 345 kph on 2 wheels. I mean, you can argue that either all sportsmen are completely crazy, or we're not crazy, but we have a risk assessment, which is probably a bit different. But craziness is not the right word, because we would kid ourselves, and we don't, you know.
What does that mean for later? Because we saw Niki Lauda before. He said the minute his career ended, he was almost released or relieved of that pressure, and to always be the best and always be the fastest. So do you think when you're 40, 50, 60, it just goes away, and then you feel or look for other passions?
I can't really answer the question, but I can echo one of the things that Niki says. Whenever the career is over, and if you have decided it's over, then the pressure of being the best goes. And that's, you know, that is hard to quantify. But I started racing 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, go-kart, and since that time I want to be the best. And you do everything to achieve that, and you know, on a psychological level, it takes a lot. So I guess one of the big relief when you stop is not so much the constraints from traveling, from physical training and so on, but it's that you don't need to be the best anymore. You know, and that,
funny enough, he also said that he never had friends while he was at Formula One, and he had to look for them afterwards, because as, you know, same as we discussed before. Yeah,
very true. You know, once you stop and you're out of the circus, then you become friend with the guy, because then, you know, it's a very different relationship that installed. You've shared the same passion, you've shared the same travel, you share the same moments, so obviously you're going to be friends. But as we say, when you compete someone and you want his seat, I'm getting on very well with Sebastian Vettel, for example, and I've got a huge respect for him, and know we're going to be friends, because we're not. But when he was at Ferrari, what did he want to do? Get his seat.
Of course.
Get the Ferrari seat, you know, and it's hard to be a friend.
It's almost a bizarre situation.
It's as if it's a friend, then Ferrari calls you, going to call your friend, say, oh, just be careful, they call me, so they want you, you know, but it doesn't work that way. So it's a huge respect when you're into it, and whenever it's over, I think you can become really good friends.
We see from that, or we hear from that you're a man who thinks about a lot of things, and you come from also a family that is very interesting. Your mother, for example, is an artist, and you have been described as a thinker in that circuit, and as someone who is not only interested in the sport itself. Did that make it a bit harder for you in the last 10 years, that you're almost considered an intellectual in that sport? And you said yourself, I don't want to be the easy guy. I'm not an oyster who's just there. I want to be myself.
Yeah, true. Probably. You know, I mean, I wouldn't change who I am and what I did, but it probably made sometimes things a bit more complicated. Just because if you don't think, you just go and you race and you don't think about it. But I always thought about how can we make things better, how can we improve. You know, even when we were 5th, 4th, I wasn't quite happy. I was trying that we do more. Obviously I was very happy, you know, but then the next thing I would say is how can we get 3rd or 2nd or 1st. And whilst some others, they think a little bit less, and they come and they do, and they don't really ask themselves any questions. And I guess in somehow it makes life a bit easier, but I would say, from my point of view, a little bit less interesting.
Or you could argue from the other side, it could help you in the next career, maybe. You've always talked about maybe you want to write a cookbook, for example. You want to become a chef, and I think you even attended or wanted to attend a chef school in France. So you do have passions outside the racing sport. Would you see yourself as I don't know, a cookbook author, for example?
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are many things that I would like to do, and many ideas. During the first lockdown in 2020, I launched an esports team, sim racing team. Yeah. We now have 25 drivers, and going racing pretty much every day of the week, and that keeps me quite busy. And I want to grow that, give the opportunity to those youngsters that are, you know, playing in their room to become professional in what they do. The same way I was being able to be a professional driver, they could be a professional esports driver. See if we can make link with the real reality. I'm also an entrepreneur in different areas. Also worked with a Swiss company called Mind Maze, and where it's about the brain and brain technology, and trying to bring to Formula One a connected balaclava with eco some sensor on the balaclava that could relate what's happening on the brain in case of an accident of the driver. So really, yes, I'm not stopping. You know, I've always my phone ringing and things doing, and really I want to do things. You know, I'm very bored when I don't do anything. So a lot going on.
Apparently, you're a very active kid, and already as a kid involved in some accidents. I read somewhere that one of your biggest dreams as a kid was to have one of those sand buggies and go look for treasures and being almost like the Indiana Jones of Geneva. When you look back at your career, did you achieve what you were?
Well, I think I need to do Dakar Rally once, so it's done on the list, which I really want to do.
A lot of drivers did it after their career.
Yeah, it's an adventure. You know, it's more than a race. It's a big adventure, and it was my best friend. We wanted, so he was interested in finding the gold on the desert. I was interested in driving the car on the dunes. So we were a good team, I guess.
So the Indiana Jones could become a reality. What about Formula One? Have you finished?
I think so. I really think so. You know, I've made my peace with it somehow. I've done 10 years. I've had a lot of fun, and as I say, I wouldn't change anything. But right now, if it's going back to Formula One, just to be on the grid and not being able to win races because you don't have the best car, I don't see any point. You know? There's many opportunities in motorsports that look great. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is a race that I competed in 2010 and that I want to go back to. 2023 is a big year for endurance racing with a lot of constructor coming in. You know, Porsche, Peugeot, Audi, also Acura, which is Honda, has announced that they are coming in. So really, I think there is some great challenge to be made, and I want to win races. You know, I don't want just to be somewhere on the grid to be on the grid. That doesn't interest me.
So that gene, that's still there, and that just doesn't go away. I mean, you're 34. You will continue racing for quite some time.
Yeah, I will continue racing. You know, obviously the question was asked after the accident, and it was not a clear cut. What am I going to do? Right now, I want to go racing. If my brain allows me. That's the only question mark I have.
Does your wife allow it? Yeah,
my wife is very supportive of the decision. Even my kids as well. They've been really good. You know, I think we have spoken. Initially, of course, they were for me to stop, but they, as we said, understand that I'm not done with racing. You know, as I say, I'm 34, and the day I stop racing is because I have had enough. And Formula One, I've had enough. You know, I loved it, and it's still going to be my passion, and I can't wait for the first Grand Prix of the year to be on so I can watch it. But if I don't have an opportunity to win races, I just don't want to go back at it. So wherever your career will take you, we wish you all the best and as few and little accidents as possible. Thank you very much for having been here. Merci beaucoup d'avoir été avec nous. Romain Grosjean, merci. Ja, und dank Ihnen vielmals sind Sie mit dabei gewesen. Wir sehen uns das nächste Mal wieder. Bis dahin eine gute Zeit, einen schönen Abend und Ade miteinander.